Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Chungmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Korea Pro podcast. It is now Thursday, September 5th, 2024. It is close to 3 p.m. Now, before I begin, as usual, I'd like to remind all of our listeners that if you have any questions or if you have any topic suggestions, please send us your emails to podcast@koreapro.org. Now, before I continue, I'd also like to point out that my usual co-host, Chungmin Kim, could not make it to today's recording, but in her place, we have our latest junior news reporter, Joon Ha Park.
Hi.
Hello, Joon Ha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, Joon Ha, this is not your first time on the podcast, so you know your way around, so let's make this real quick and snappy. So a lot of things have happened this week. Now, the first thing that I'm going to need to ask you about is Kim Tae-hyo. Could you remind our listeners who Kim Tae-hyo is and why he was in the news this week?
Yeah, so Kim Tae-hyo is South Korea's principal national security advisor. He's the deputy national security advisor, actually, and he gave a talk at a forum, and he had quite a couple of interesting things to say about how a Trump re-election could change the U.S.-South Korea dynamic. Basically, Kim thinks if Trump makes a comeback, he might try to renegotiate about how much the U.S. helps out with South Korea's defense financially, like maybe reducing the deployment of strategic assets unless South Korea picks up more of the cost. Kim also suggested that Trump, with his more transactional view of alliances, might not be as focused on deterring North Korea as Biden is right now. In fact, he thinks that Trump would jump at the chance for another dramatic summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, and while that could sound good, Kim Tae-hyo warns that Kim Jong-un could use Trump's love for spectacle to bypass South Korea and negotiate directly with the United States.
Okay, but he's also mentioned a few other things. Like he said that it will probably weaken the U.S. nuclear umbrella to help defend South Korea from the North Korean nuclear attacks. And he also made a lot of comments about how there's a lot of people within the Harris administration who are, quote unquote, unfamiliar and how a Trump administration might also change things about. Now, here's my question. All of these things that Kim Tae-hyo said are things that many other people have said, have written about. People who are legitimate think tankers, university professors, your regular pundits, even we have said the same thing many times. But why is the principal national security advisor saying this publicly to the press? Even the president won't comment on U.S. domestic politics. Why is he saying all of this?
Well, it's no question that he's being rather candid about his comments. But at the same time, I think that if I do play devil's advocate, is that Kim's message is that South Korea does need to stay sharp and be proactive and prepare for all of the possibilities of a different U.S. president, be it Harris or Trump, especially as the U.S. political landscape, especially with the 50-50 going on now.
Oh, you're not going to hear any disagreements from me about how South Korea needs to remain sharp. But shouldn't this sort of discussion be held, behind closed doors? For a government official to make this kind of public remark about an allied country's domestic political affairs is really, shall we say, a faux pas.
Yeah, so as I said before, it's quite candid, it's very premature at this moment, and quite frankly, as a citizen, I don't think that Kim should be saying these comments publicly. I think they should be hiding behind back doors, especially quite severe comments like this. So I think that Kim's messaging really does need to change from the future.
Okay, but now we have to move on real quick. We have to move on to the next topic. Now, Joon Ha, you have written about South Korea's military exports, military training, a lot of things military related. Could you walk us through what's been happening with Hanwha Ocean and Poland?
Okay, so Hanwha Ocean, they signed a memorandum of understanding with Polish defense firm WB Group to collaborate on a submarine project. Hanwha Ocean and WB Group will work together on maintenance, repair, and overhaul.
MRO services.
Yeah, MRO services. And the partnership was likely aimed at Hanwha Ocean in securing the Orca submarine construction project, part of the Polish government's naval construction program with South Korea.
Now, I remember writing about this a year ago, about how South Korea is likely going to want to get involved with the Orca project. But a year ago, one of the experts that I quoted told me that this is not going to be as easy as South Korea being able to export K2s and K9s. Now, why is that?
Yeah, so as I said, so South Korea has successfully exported tanks and howitzers to Poland because of European defense production limitations when it comes to land units. But when it comes to naval units, it's a different story. Germany, France, and Sweden are highly competitive in this field, leading to a lot of complications for South Korea and Poland to go ahead with the Orca project.
So there's going to be a lot more competition with these European countries, and military deals are very political, and so they were going to want to keep it within NATO. Sure, that's a given. But South Korea's also been a very close partner with Poland since the 2022. So might this actually help Hana Ocean, or do you think that this is just Hana Ocean going for a Hail Mary?
I think that it could be both. I think that Hana Ocean does have the basic research and development structure to support the Orca structure project. However, I do think that they are facing quite significant risks in the European market, especially in the naval field.
Okay.
All right, so now we'll move on to the next section, trade policy. So, John, I heard that South Korea and Western Australia, they inked an agreement on some key minerals. Could you talk to us a little about that?
Yeah, I wrote about this week. This was a rather comprehensive deal. Now, this agreement between South Korea and Western Australia, it wasn't just about critical minerals. It was also to do with clean energy. But let's focus on the critical minerals part first. A lot of this has to do with lithium. And lithium is a very important critical mineral, and that's because it is a key component in electric vehicle batteries. Without lithium, electric vehicle batteries will not function. Now, because of the importance of lithium, South Korea's imported a lot of it, but a lot of South Korea's lithium comes from China. China holds the largest global share of this market. But Australia is also a very resource-rich country, and they don't have the kind of capacity that China does yet. But Australia really wants to exploit this market and become a key exporter in this market. And so South Korea has entered into this sort of agreement with Australia, and now they want to get a lot of lithium from Australia. But there are going to be a lot of key challenges.
What are the risks?
Well, the biggest challenge is that South Korea is not the only player on the block. Every major player from Australia, the US, China, all of these different firms from these different countries are all going to Australia to try to get as many rights as possible. And one of the things and one of the ways that all this lithium is being sold is by auctioning lithium extraction rights. So what all of these different companies will have to do is say, I'm going to be willing to pay however much amount of money for whatever amount of land that you guys are offering.
Sure.
And so what this does is that South Korea is now going to have to start bidding in these auction processes with all of these other companies. And so what that means, because there are so many players in Australia right now, it doesn't leave a lot of room for favorable bids for South Korea. And so that's a kind of issue that's going on. The same thing goes for clean energy. For clean energy, you would think that, now, when you think of companies like, say, BP, you might think of the Gulf oil spill from all those years ago, right? But BP has completely changed its image since then. Now they're also trying to get into the clean energy business. So BP, Shell, these are some international companies that are also doing business in Australia. And within Australia, they also have their domestic firms too. And there are lots of land regulations, such as about Aboriginal land rights that South Korea will need to actually really get themselves familiar with, because we have to remember that there was a coal mine called the Carmichael coal mine that took years to build because of how much pollution and how much regulation violation that company had been allegedly going through. And so, yeah, South Korea has a lot of opportunities, but it also has a lot of challenges to look ahead to.
Okay, nice. Okay, so moving on, I just wanted to ask about the Czech nuclear bid of South Korea. What's going on there?
Yeah, that was something that was really good news for a very short while it lasted. And it all comes down to the same thing. It comes down to one particular American company, and that's Westinghouse Electric. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with the issue, back in June or July,
July,
thank you, the Czech Republic picked South Korea's KHNP, that's Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Corporation, as its preferred bidder to build its new nuclear power plant. And so KHNP was excited about this, but KHNP had been in the middle of a lawsuit with Westinghouse Electric, and that's because Westinghouse has been saying since 2022 that the reactors that South Korea has been exporting are based on its designs, and that because of the agreement that Westinghouse and KHNP had over the years, Westinghouse is claiming that South Korea can use those reactors within South Korea but cannot export them. Now, in 2023, a U.S. court dismissed Westinghouse's lawsuit, but of course there's an appeal process, and so this is what's going on right now. The Czech Republic chose South Korea, and Westinghouse, along with the French company EDF, they filed complaints, and so the Czech Republic has no choice but to review the selection process again. And so the words are to review, but when it comes to this kind of review process, it could take at least a minimum of a year, if not even longer. And so this is going to just keep delaying or perhaps even derail South Korea's nuclear export ambition plans.
So what's the Czech Republic government's position?
Well, the South Korean president met with the Czech National Security Advisor just yesterday, and the Czech National Security Advisor reportedly said, I'm not quite sure if he actually said this, the presidential office quoted him as saying this, but the presidential office said the Czech National Security Advisor said it expects to go through with the entire agreement with South Korea. So maybe there's a room for some sort of an agreement, but this is going to be a global international lawsuit, and these things take time.
Right. Okay. So moving on to society points. So, John, you want to take us off there?
We have to talk about, again, the whole deepfake porn crime spree that has been engulfing this country for such a long time. Now, we've already mentioned this with Jungmin last week about how these losers and basement dwellers have been using deepfake AI images of all the women in their lives to make this disgusting pornographic images. And not that I've got anything against porn personally, but this is criminal porn. This is illegal porn.
Absolutely.
And so what's been going on is that because of all of these cases that have been building up, hundreds of people on Telegram reported being in these different chat rooms, dozens, if not hundreds of women coming forward and saying that their images have been used in these AI deepfake images, a lot of them being teenagers, by the way. And so the South Korean police launched a preliminary investigation of Telegram, that mobile encrypted messaging app that's been in the news because it's been the preferred encryption app that people have been using to exchange all of these videos and pictures with each other.
So the move does follow France's arrest of the Telegram CEO, right?
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but his name is Pavel Durov. He is the CEO of Telegram, and he was arrested by the French government for similar charges.
Okay.
And so there is a lot of room for, there's a lot of opportunity and room for cooperation between the South Korean and the French police departments to see how much they can actually charge or investigate Telegram for all of the allegations that have been made against the company. But this entire thing signals quite the shift. South Korea is not really trying to go after the individual users themselves, it seems like, but rather trying to go after the platforms themselves.
Yeah, great point. So I think that's the main crux of this conversation, right? So
I'm not sure if it's even possible to go after the individual users. In order to go after all of them, you would need all of these encryption messaging apps to cooperate with not just South Korea, but with every government in the world and be willing to give up all of their users' data. That's suicide for a lot of these for these apps. A lot of these apps are used primarily for privacy purposes. But if once they're cooperating with one government, giving up all of the users' data, as despicable as these people may be, it's suicide for these businesses. And so I'm not quite sure how much progress they're going to make, but South Korea seems to be trying to be willing to give it the old college try.
So what's Telegram saying then?
Telegram is saying that it is cooperating. They said that they deleted 25 images, but that is a drop in the bucket. There are tens of thousands of these pictures, hundreds of thousands even. And so 25 images is nothing. It might be a good start, but
It's incredibly low.
It's incredibly low. Exactly.
Join the Korea Pro community and unlock a world of exclusive insights on Korea. As a Korea Pro member, you gain access to articles, expert analyses, and comprehensive reports that keep you ahead on Korean affairs. Plus, enjoy priority invites to our unique events in Seoul that connect you with key leaders and influencers. Elevate your understanding of Korea. Join us today at koreapro.org/podcast.
All right. Now, we have to move on to the week ahead real quick. Now, this is not happening next week, but it is happening on Friday, on the day that you are listening to this, hopefully. And on Friday, finally, after we've been talking about this for 3 weeks, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will make his last visit to South Korea as Japan's Prime Minister for his final summit meeting with President Yoon Suk-yeol. And also, but this next one's going to happen actually next week on Monday and Tuesday. There is going to be a global forum called Responsible AI in the Military Domain. Re-AIM. It's a conference. It's as the name suggests, it's going to be talking about how much AI is going to be used in the military hardware so that we don't get one of those Skynet sorts of things from Terminator. So a lot of this information will be handled to you in the week ahead email, which will be sent to your inboxes by Tungmin. So please, if you want to know more about this information, subscribe. Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jungmin Kim.
And I'm John Lay. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.